It was just past noon when Emily Harper, a 32-year-old social worker known across her small Oregon town for her quiet resilience and tireless compassion, stepped out of the bustling community center into the crisp air of an October afternoon. The trees were shedding leaves like silent prayers, golden and red whispers swirling around her boots, and though she had spent the morning as she always did, helping organize meals, sorting donated coats, comforting people who no longer had anyone to comfort them, today felt different, heavy in her chest in a way she couldn't name, as if the universe was holding its breath for something she didn't yet understand. It was a feeling that settled like fog as she walked down Oak Street, passing the rusted bench and the old bookstore that had been closed since COVID hit, and that's when she saw him. Slumped against the wall, legs pulled to his chest, hoodie up, arms wrapped around himself in a way that didn't just say, "I'm cold," but screamed, "I'm trying to disappear," and even before she saw his face, Emily felt it, something deeper than the surface, a storm behind his stillness, a kind of loss that went beyond the physical, and as she approached, careful not to startle him, she noticed the dirt on his hands, the way his knuckles were scraped like he'd been fighting either the world or himself, and when she knelt down beside him and asked, "Are you okay?" he didn't flinch or look away. He just shook his head once, slowly, eyes hollow and far away, like he wasn't there at all, and Emily, used to broken stories and silent pain, didn't push, didn't ask for his name or demand answers. She just sat beside him for a moment in silence, then reached into her bag and offered him a granola bar and a bottle of water, which he took with hands that trembled not just from the cold but something deeper, and after a long, quiet pause, as the wind whistled through the alley, she did something that would change everything. She reached out and gently pulled him into a hug, not tight or urgent, but warm and steady, and at first, he sat stiff and frozen, as if his body had forgotten what human touch felt like, but then, suddenly, he collapsed into her arms, sobbing, breathless, gasping cries that came from some locked chamber of his soul that had finally broken open, and Emily held him, not saying a word, not rushing the moment, just anchoring him to a truth he had long forgotten. That he mattered, that someone saw him, that he was still here. People passed, glanced, looked away, but she didn't care, didn't move until his sobs softened into shudders and then into stillness, and when he pulled away, wiping his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, he whispered hoarsely, "Thank you," and Emily smiled gently, responding, "You don't have to explain. You're safe now," before inviting him back to the community center just a few blocks away, where he followed her without hesitation, like a child finding shelter from a storm. There, she gave him soup, a clean towel, a warm blanket, and space to breathe, and still, he didn't say much, but when their eyes met, she could see something changing. A flicker of light in all that darkness, and though she didn't pry, she offered the phone at the front desk if he ever wanted to call someone, and he stared at it for a long time before shaking his head again, this time with tears in his eyes, whispering, "I don't think anyone wants to hear from me," and Emily, placing a hand gently on his shoulder, simply replied, "You'd be surprised how much people still love you, even when you've disappeared," and left it at that. Hours passed, and as the sky began to dim and the center prepared to close, Emily gave him a small care package, gloves, socks, a sandwich for later, and asked if he had somewhere to sleep, and he hesitated before saying, "I've been sleeping by the bridge, but it gets loud," and her heart ached, so she called a contact at a local shelter and arranged a bed for him that night, but before he left, she asked softly, "What's your name?" And he finally replied, "Noah," and it felt like a sacred exchange, a name given back to the world. Not long after Noah had left for the shelter, just as Emily was locking up and the night had fully arrived, headlights swept across the pavement and 2 police cars pulled into the community center lot, no sirens, just the low hum of presence, and her heart skipped as 2 officers stepped out, one older, one younger, and approached with firm but respectful urgency, asking if a young man matching Noah's description had been there, and Emily, cautious but calm, nodded and asked if he was in trouble, and that's when everything changed. The older officer, his face lined with years of witnessing both devastation and grace, explained gently that Noah had been reported missing by his mother over 6 weeks ago, last seen on campus where he was studying engineering before he vanished without a trace, and she had been searching relentlessly ever since, hanging flyers, knocking on doors, even hiring a private investigator with what little money she had left. fearing every day that her only son had become another statistic, another cold case, until earlier that evening, a phone call came into their station, a short, shaking voice saying, "I'm okay. Please tell my mom I'm okay." Someone hugged me today, and I remembered who I am, and when they traced the number, it came from the community center's landline, and Emily's eyes welled with tears as the weight of the moment settled into her chest like warm fire. Without hesitation, she told the officers where the shelter was, and just then, another car pulled in. This time not a cruiser, but a silver SUV with its headlights still on, and from it stepped a woman in her 50s, wearing a blue sweater and a look that was part hope, part heartbreak, and when she saw the older officer nod toward Emily, she rushed over, breathless, eyes wide, voice trembling. "Is he here? Is Noah here?" And Emily, overwhelmed but steady, gently placed a hand on the woman's arm and said, "He was, just a few hours ago. He's safe, I promise. We'll take you to him," and within minutes, the officers coordinated everything, guiding the mother to the shelter, and Emily stood in the parking lot under the soft glow of the lamppost, watching them drive away, her heart full in a way she couldn't explain. The next morning, as she arrived early to open the center, there was an envelope waiting at the door. No postage, no return address. Just her name written in careful cursive, and inside, a letter from Noah's mother that began, "Dear Emily, I don't know who you are or what made you stop for my son, but you gave him back to me," and as she read the words, tears fell freely, not out of sorrow, but from the sheer magnitude of witnessing how one small, human moment could reroute an entire life. Over the next few weeks, Emily learned that Noah had struggled quietly for years, with anxiety, self-doubt, the pressure to be perfect, and when things got too loud in his mind, he simply ran, believing he was a burden, that the world would be better without him, and all it took to pull him back was one hug, one person who didn't look away, one stranger who saw him not as a problem to fix but a soul worth holding. Months passed, and Emily kept doing her work, still organizing meals, still offering blankets and hope. But now with a deeper conviction, because she knew firsthand how powerful a moment of connection could be, how the smallest gesture could echo into eternity, and then, one snowy December afternoon, as the center bustled with holiday donations, the door opened and in walked Noah, cleaner now, fuller in the face, with clearer eyes and a nervous smile, holding a box labeled, "For the next person who needs a reason to stay," filled with journals, warm socks, handwritten notes that simply said, "You matter," and Emily, too surprised to speak, just hugged him again, and this time, he hugged her back with all the strength of someone who had found his way home, and in that quiet embrace, in that humble center filled with second chances, a powerful truth crystallized, that healing doesn't always come from hospitals, and rescue doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes, it comes from the heart of a stranger, sitting quietly in the cold, offering nothing more and nothing less than the warmth of presence, and that's how the world heals, not in waves, but in ripples, one hug at a time.